Warning, this episode contains adult language and adult humor. Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults? If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Aaron Romm. Aaron is a man of many talents and many voices. He has performed across the globe as a featured soloist and with his parents as part of the Romm Family Trio. He is a dedicated educator, a black belt in Taekwondo, a voice actor, and a bit of a comedian. Aaron approaches the trumpet and life with a positive attitude and wins people over with his infectious smile and wacky sense of humor. So pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. And welcome to this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang. Today, my special guest is Mr. Aaron Romm. And for those of you who don't know Aaron, you don't know Aaron. And we're going to learn a lot about him today. Great trumpet player. And besides that, he also has a great beard. For those of you who are viewing today on our video stream, yes, Aaron is
doing his thing. So Aaron, man, it's just good to see you again. It's been a while.
Oh, I apologize. I was just reading a little bit about about mindfulness secrets. I apologize. Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, you know, it's been a bit, and as we are doing this episode today, we are obviously still in the midst of the COVID-19 lockdowns, and
madness.
Yeah, it is madness, and yeah, everybody's kind of dealing with it differently. And I just, you know, how are you dealing with stuff? I mean, how's this affecting you and your profession?
Well, you know, when I'm running around screaming and crying and curled up in the fetal position in the corner, things are looking pretty good. No, actually, you know, I've been really fortunate. My wife and I both, and my parents also, we've all been very fortunate that while we lose work from the performance side of things, we've been able to teach, and we're all actually together right now,
okay.
which is really nice, and down in Florida. And you know, with all that stuff in mind, it's made me kind of count my blessings a little bit more, and say, like, are the things that I would stress out before truly things that I really need to be losing sleep over, versus, you know, the grander scheme of things. Not to sound all woo woo, but I think that the health, family, time spent together, and the way that we treat the time that we spend together. And again, I don't mean to sound like Miss America here, but those things are really becoming much more important to me than they were before, but even more so, obviously. So we're doing actually quite well. I try to avoid watching the news when possible, and not because I want to be insensitive, but just because of with worry. I try to avoid that, and that really gets in the way of my person and when I'm actually trying to get some work done.
Yeah.
So yeah, and to make a short answer really long, sorry about that. we're doing really well. So.
Good deal. Well, you know, that's one of the things that when we first met, I think kind of we felt this connection on, is that, you know, having being trumpet players, obviously, but having a little more of a, for lack of a better word, kind of a spiritual, the philosophical approach to life. And I mean, it certainly served me well. And I think that it certainly helped you a lot in your processes, and we share a mutual love for martial arts. And I keep up with your split training.
That's silliness. Nothing compared to you. You know, one of the things that I cannot compare myself or even consider myself in your realm as a martial artist, because you are a true martial artist, right? I am an enthusiast, and we're both enthusiasts, but I'm not a true martial artist. I would be, I think, not doing the work and the study that people like you have put into it over an entire lifetime. doing that justice versus me just like watching a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. And but
Well, I watch my share of those too. So,
well, why not? Because it's great fun. But don't everybody attack at once. We'll all get confused. No, but it's something that's been, the martial arts have been pretty important as a guide growing up for me, and I know for you as well. But yeah, it's a really special thing that it seems to tie into everything. So
yeah,
that's really nice.
Yeah. Well, like you're saying, you don't consider yourself doing martial arts justice to call yourself a martial artist. It's like, I don't call myself a trumpet player. I'm a trumpet enthusiast. I've been playing for a while, and I do okay, but compared to someone like you, or your dad, other people, it's like, we all are on different levels, and just like there are people that look up to you, there are players that look up to me, which is very frightening. So, but I think that like for me over the years, learning the idea, what I call the Kung Fu equation, because in Chinese Kung Fu, actually Gong Fu, as they really technically say, means a skill that you get through time and hard work. That's what it really means. It doesn't mean martial art. So as I've reached this ripe old age of, nearly 60, I'm able to look back and see the parallel threads in life and try and put them all together. And what it takes to be a great martial artist is the same thing it takes to be a great trumpet player, or to be a great father or a great businessman or anything. Anything that you want to be good at, you just got to put in the time and the work. And having a good mentor always helps too. So,
right.
So the skills that you learn are able to be placed, wherever you want to place them. So, like, who are some of the obviously, I think your dad is a big mentor for you, but who are some of the other people that really impacted you in terms of your growth as a musician?
It's strange growing up with around the Candian Brass, and it had to come out at some point. Growing up around the Candian Brass, I didn't realize that planted a concept of what brass instruments can sound like, right? Mm-hmm. And so Fred Mills, the late Fred Mills, late great Fred Mills, I should say. Anytime I pick up a piccolo trumpet, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I think about Maurice Andre," or so on and so forth. I think of Fred, and matching those sounds that are in the head and in the heart, as best as I possibly can. The guy was a giant, but as a mentor before actual mentorship, right? That was just the example along the way,
right?
But it as well, there are a lot of people along the way who've been there when they didn't need to be, right? And off the top of my head, I haven't, especially right now, I haven't reached out to him as much as I probably should, but my instructor when I first went to college was Alan Cox, and he was at Southern Mississippi for a long time, and he was at Vanderbilt when I was there. And he had a really nice way of working with me, because I go to college and it's Ronnie Romm's son, it's gotta be amazing. And no, at the time I was just getting and going. I decided very late that I wanted to do this. So he was very patient with me, we should say. And along the way, one of the gentlemen that I have the opportunity now to work with, that I've moved back to Florida, Victor Mongillo, who was my first trumpet teacher. Can you imagine that? Ronnie Romm calling you up and saying, "Hey, would you teach my son trumpet?" Like, right? And so now he's teaching at a school here now where I coach, and so he's brought me in pretty much on a weekly basis to work with his band program. And that's a real honor, So he's an incredible commercial style player, and just a really great guy and wonderful teacher. So, my teachers along the way, trumpet wise, certainly have been, I Captain Obvious over here, but really, really important and impactful in a very positive way. And I think sometimes we learn more from the people that we weren't necessarily inspired by. I won't talk about those people necessarily, but how I will not treat people.
Exactly.
That's a pretty good one, right?
Yeah.
So I think we've all had teachers like that, and that's part of the journey too. So.
Yeah. Well, I remember having a conversation with you about, growing up in a famous musical family. And I mean, I'm sure you get asked about that a lot about, growing up with a dad, trumpet playing dad who's so well known and so beloved in the trumpet playing community. But uh, how much pressure did you feel to pick up the trumpet? And did your dad like add to the pressure, or did he kind of back up off of it? Or
No, they're all really cool about that. One thing I do want to make clear to everybody, I forgot to mention. It seems so obvious, but in the last question, I did. My dad has always been a mentor and continues to be to me, very important, and we do get along really well. So there's that's helpful. It's not like, oh, I have repressed memories, but no, it's no, he is a forever mentor for me. So now to jump to this question, your there was really never any pressure at all. It's actually kind of a funny story. When the gentleman who I was just talking about, Victor, was starting the band program at the school where I was going to at the time, they sent a letter home, all the parents, and saying, we're starting a band program. If his children would like to start, let us know what instrument they're interested in. We'll have a petting zoo and all that stuff, right? And so I come home, and I announced to Mom and Dad, Mom, Dad, I want to play. And they're like, oh,
here it
the
comes.
tuba. I said the tuba, right? And I can distinctly remember Dad kind of like, all right, so Chuck in the brass, he has to carry that big tuba case around everywhere he goes, right?
Right.
I said, yeah. Do you want to do that? No.
Isn't that what roadies are for?
That's right. So, from there it was the trumpet, and is it, I think the real question is like, oh, it was great, wonderful, sure, and so I think the real trick for them, and I applaud them for this, was when I said I think I'd like to study trumpet for college, and growing up they never made a big deal about who Dad is. In fact, he's right up there watching over us, right? Yeah, I'm there. They never made a big deal. I didn't think like every dad did that, but it was more like that's just what he did, and that was his work.
Right.
It wasn't like he always had this thing, and I believe in that too. Never believe your own PR, right?
Yeah.
And and if you ever talk to him, it's very much like that. Self-aware, but also very self-effacing, and so I would meet people along the way. I could never really understand it at the time, where they're like, "Wait, your last name is Romm?" I said, "Yeah," and your last name is whatever, right? And they say, "Are you related to Ronald Romm?" I said, "Yeah, he's my dad." Like, and to me, it was just people, dad, work. And that's what it was, right? And music was always still a very positive thing, and so like understanding later on, it's like, oh, oops, and I never wanted to sound like a pompous weenie about the whole thing, but that's just kind of what it is, and I applaud my parents for that, because I think it's very easy to say like, oh well we do this, and right, with sometimes without realizing it.
Yeah,
but they're always very cool about it, and they made sure to make it known that it was Dad first and Ronnie Romm of the Canadian Brass second, right? And he would call home every day, wherever he was, Germany, Japan, Dayton, I don't know, wherever they were performing, he would call home every single day. And I can't imagine in the 80s what the phone bill was. They said something like upwards of the many hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah.
Like, nuts. So when cell phones came, I was like, ring ring, hello, and to carry this huge box with you back. For those of you listening, but yeah, so that was that. Growing up around that, it was, music has always been a very positive thing, but never in a way that was like you have to do this. So what they told me was early on, look, if you want to do it, we'll help you. All you got to do is ask. So the ball was in my court, and I think I developed a little bit of pride. It's like, no, I can do this on my own. which is, now that I think about it, if I could go back and slap myself in the face, I would. But just take the resources when you have them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that I tell my students a lot too, is like, look, if you need help, let me know. If I assign something to you that might be a little bit challenging, which is every time, let me know, and we'll see how we can kind of work through it. But rarely is there the follow through of, not to pick on my students, but rarely is there the follow through of like, hey, I'm having trouble with this, right? Versus like, okay, we got this. So, so hey, the student's part of the journey. So that's what it is.
Well, I think it's trying to find that delicate balance in ego, where the ego is kind of what drives us to want to be better, to do better, and there's a certain satisfaction that you get from figuring it out on your own, but there's also a lot of frustration that goes along with that. So just having that healthy ego to be able to say, there's somebody that could give me some assistance, and that's going to help me get further a lot faster than me trying to muddle through the forest for a while.
Sorry to interrupt. As a master, and teaching others, kung fu. I mean, you see the actions, right? You see what they're doing, where they're struggling. Do you see that similarly in the way of what you might see in a trumpet student as well? I'm just out of my curiosity.
It's all the same thing, that's kind of my philosophy on life at this point. It's like, it's all the same thing. And I got in an argument with one of my top students years ago, where I was saying, oh, this movement in this form is like this movement in this other form. And she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, well, no, it's exactly the same. She goes, well, but that's this style and this is another style, so they can't be the same. And I'm like, no, it's the same thing. And I mean, her head just blew up. And I took that and I took it from the martial arts side, and I started to look at life. And one of my favorite quotes is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so there's a science to success. There's methods, there's processes that you have to go through, whether it's the mental processes or the physical processes, but there's a process that you go through. And it's the same across the board. The names have been changed to protect the innocent, but the story is absolutely the same. So yeah, the things that you see as a trumpet professor, the things you would see as a martial arts professor, is the things you would see as a business consultant. There's no difference. There really is no difference. So there's my answer.
I would imagine kind of, the tables have turned, Mr. Bond. Shifting that around on you, but just out of my own curiosity, because going back to Taekwondo for a little while, and actually I ran into one of the masters that yesterday who works during her day job is building signs for companies, right?
Okay.
And my wife and I were on a walk, and and I'm just raining sweat, right? And we're just walking. Granted, it's Florida, it's hot, but so it's like, oh, I've totally been running this entire time. No, I was walking. And so we see, she was this lady, very fit. My wife says like, oh, I want to look like that, right? I said, wait a second, that's Master so-and-so, right? And so we went over and said, I was just like, I haven't seen you guys since your wedding. And that was September, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, so where you been, right? And but seeing that process of when I was growing up, it's the same lady that was there the entire time, right? Of like, hey, what do you work on now? You get to a certain level, what do you work on? It's the same. I guess I'm shifting gears here a little bit, but at what point do we start changing, going away from form one? Here's a straight punch, here's a low block, versus long tones, scales. It's all the same, right? Yeah. I guess I'm now just putting into pieces what you just said.
Yeah, it's all fundamentals. Today. Yeah, it's all fundamentals. And it's I think maybe if you look at people that are great in anything, that it's their ability to make friends with the mundane. You know, it's, if you're a trumpet player, it's doing your long tones, it's doing your finger exercises, the stuff that's not particularly sexy.
Yeah.
Martial
And trying to make
arts
it sexy. That's the tricky part.
Well, that is the thing. And when you can do that, when you can develop this love affair with the process, then you're going to reach these higher levels. But everybody's always looking for the next shiny thing. It's like this squirrel kind of world. So but yeah, there's definitely the correlations there. When you, as you mentioned before, you made your little James Bond quote. You are famous for your James Bond photo with your Warburton trumpet.
Of course, I appreciate that.
Yes,
I appreciate it. The rest of the conversation will be in Sean Connery today.
Maybe not. Okay, it's been a great time with you, Aaron. We'll say it.
I appreciate you having me. It's great, yeah. Hey, you said anything goes, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually where I wanted to go, is that humor plays a big part in your life. You're quick with a joke. You like to have a little fun, and who's your big source of inspiration for your humor?
Well, the family, I mean, is, again, to bring Dad back into the picture. I mean, he's got a really funny, of course, but strange in a really fun way, sense of humor. And my mom is very dry, so I grew up around that. But I used to watch a lot of Ren and Stimpy growing up, and my biggest heroes, one of my biggest heroes. So to really answer your question from before, I keep coming back. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
sorry.
There you go.
Hashtag not sorry. Jim Carrey, and just idolized the guy growing up, right? But a lot of his was based off of Looney Tunes, right? So I watched a lot of cartoons growing up. So I look at the different personalities and the characters and situations and try to find the lunacy in everything as much as I can, because it is too easy. I mentioned before, not watching the news. It's very easy to look at the poopy going on out there, but if we can find just some little morsel of ridiculous in anything that we do, then it makes life so much easier to deal with, right? And so that's not to say like I'm a tortured soul. It's not like that at all. I've had a very pampered lifestyle so far, but finding the funny and the characters and pretty much everything we do musically, it helps me out too, finding characters. And I think growing up I did want to be an actor, so naturally kind of gravitating toward that, and then moving toward the voice side of things, of characters and the very unique sounds that some characters can make. So it's to me, that's kind of where that comes from. There's a lot of cartoons and Mel Blanc, man, what a master.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh yeah, I love Mel Blanc.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, there's a book that I'm actually reading right now. It's called The Alter Ego Effect by he's a high performance coach, like a sports performance coach. Also does a lot of stuff with like entertainers and business people. Tom Herman. I always get those two confused. There's a coach, and then there's like a football coach, and then there's I think it's Todd Herman. But his whole thing is that particularly in the field of athletics, that people develop these alter egos where it's the when you're on the field, you become a different person. And, then he's worked with entertainers and business people and things like that. So do you have an alter ego that you go to for your performances?
For the performances, there's not one. I would say the short answer is there's not one. The best way I can describe, I've been told along the way that when you pick up the trumpet, all bets are off, right? And but there's not really one. What I found has been most effective is whatever that personality is for that piece or particular performance. And even then, that's still going to be my take on it. So it's not a entirely separate alter ego. You know, I would say that so for example, playing Haydn or something like that, you know, the standard repertoire, that if I'm playing that, I'm still, you know, you walk out there with the posture and all that stuff, but in the same way, it's still got to be you bringing that idea,
Right.
I think. So and I've found that to be really effective for me. So there is a maybe a better way to describe it is a conversation between me and an alter ego.
Right.
Why? Because I tell the best jokes and I laugh at all my jokes, so it works
well.
out well. But there's that. So, but yeah, I think that's there. It's there, and sometimes it's just even just a feeling, you know, going past the nerves, the usual bodily issues, whatever you want to call them, or there's a better term for that, I'm sure, but we'll go with that for bodily issues.
We'll go. That'll work. Does that tie in with your Pampers thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that you mention it, that's my endorsement deal. But actually, right now it'd be a great time to be endorsed by Pampers or a toilet paper company.
Yeah.
But you know, for that, say, you know, bringing tying all that stuff together, and not even in a way it's practiced, I should say, you know, what you want to bring out, but what you can muster in the moment. So that's always been more fun for me. The more that you build something up in your head, you know, and when it's time to finally let it out, sometimes if it doesn't go the way that you expected or wanted it to, it's like, man. But rather this idea of living in that moment and whatever you bring to it. Is not saying we don't practice, not saying all this, but whatever you bring to that moment of performance, and that's what it is. And what I found is to really to find that character and live there for a second, and you know, for that time that you're on stage or recording.
Yeah,
it's really hard to do in recording. So
yeah, well, do your thing. I feel how your like your joy for music and your joy for life comes out in what you say, what you do. And I was recently looking at some of your videos, and we won't talk about those videos. But like, I was really impressed with your performance of the Concerto for Harry James. And
thank
you. Just the sound. That's like, if I wasn't looking at you and I'm listening, that sounds like, that's a Harry James sound right there,
man. That means a lot. Thank you.
But I know that you are called upon as a featured soloist to have to switch gears quite a bit, and you're talking about, like, doing the Haydn, or if you do the Brandenburg or something like that, it's going to have a completely different feel. But do you have like a particular piece that you feel like, this is me, this is my jam?
I in a strange way, I'm not known as a jazz player. I'm not known as a swing time player, a specialist like that. But for whatever reason, I do seem to connect to the Harry James Concerto, right? I any of his other big pieces, I haven't really dived into those too much, but for whatever reason, that one connects, right? But you talk about Brandenburg, that one, I again, I'm not known as the guy for Brandenburg. I think I'm known as the guy that's dumb enough to say yes to it when asked. No. And I say that only as a joke, but with all great respect for it. The way that I think of this in a spiritual way, having the opportunity to play something like that, elevated by Bach, is the closest in that moment that I'll have a conversation with a higher power, right? And whatever religion you want to think of in terms of that, by all means, but in terms of what a magical thing to be a part of for Brandenburg Concerto No. 2. And it is a very humbling experience. Bach always wins whenever you play that. Doesn't matter how well you do, he still wins. If you completely poop the bed, he still wins, right? So I I think it's again such an honor to do that. So I would say that one on a personal level, that's not my jam. It's one of those things of a friend that you like to visit that happens to be a formidable foe.
Ah,
Right. So yeah, I kind of wishy-washy around the answer, but yeah, I guess I'm also fortunate enough to now that I'm thinking about it, I'm fortunate to play stuff that I like a lot. There's not a whole lot that I feel like I have to play, and that opens up a lot of other opportunities on the stage to explore those characters when you're not stuck in like, I hate this, I really don't want to be here right now. You end up being very closed off.
yeah.
Right? And I think that stifles a lot of what you, me, anybody else can bring to a performance. This is why people show up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun. It's all
Yeah,
fun.
that's it. I know for personally, I've gone through like kind of these different stages, these metamorphosis, if you will, of loving and living for the performance, and being more engrossed with the processes that go on in the teaching and the sharing. So where do you find yourself right now? Do you feel like you lean more towards being the educator or being the performer?
Right now, more the educator. Simply right now in this moment. Well, these moments right now, this
Right.
time
Yeah.
that we're quarantined, as an educator, mostly because I'm working on a couple projects that have to do directly with that. Working on a video course with Dad, actually, on this.
Awesome.
More soon on that when it's ready to be. It's like Zoolander and Magnum, right? Not ready for that look yet. But the what are you drinking, by the way? That looks delish.
I was drinking a green smoothie of some sort.
Of some sort. You don't want to tell me what's in there, do you?
I have no idea what's in there. My wife gave this to me,
But
and
it's good for you. And
it makes you poop. That's all I know. It makes you poop. So.
This is important advice. I guess my grandmother handed this down. Eat, sleep, go to the bathroom. That's really what you need, which is true. You come down to it. I mean, we can dress ourselves up and all we want and be these awesome performers, but that's what we all have in common. We all need to eat, sleep, go to the bathroom. So there's that.
It's making sure that you get it in the right order. If you're pooping while you're sleeping, you may have a slight problem. So yeah.
We'll get off the poop subject, but there's while we're doing the stream of consciousness thing here, I saw a meme a while back. It's a doctor saying, or a patient talking to a doctor, says, "Doctor, I have a problem. Every morning I poop at 8 a.m." He says, "Well, what's the problem with that?" He says, "Well, I get up at 9."
Yeah.
And that was always been good for a chuckle. But anyway, back to these
the serious
subjects. Yes,
but
of course.
So education, you're working on a project with your dad, and that's coming up. But
yeah, and I to think about this idea of what we're just talking about with fundamentals is such. I guess as an educator in this area, I've become the fundamentals guy. Right. And I think every teacher culture it's kind of like, you go to this teacher for that, you go to that teacher for this and all this. And I guess I've partly because we don't see this enough in schools, is the fundamentals of playing and connecting that to musicianship and finding the way to do that for each personality.
Right.
And so I decided that became my quest this past few years to do that, because I didn't grow up working solely on fundamentals. Like I understood how the trumpet can sound, and the music part for me was never that. I shouldn't say it was easy, but once I got it, I understood. Right? It's like, okay, and that happened fairly quickly by comparison to things like fundamentals. So I had to work really hard at figuring out fundamentals and the why of those things and how that connects to music. So I said, well, if I'm like that, and undoubtedly there's some other people that share that too, of like, okay, why do we do this, and how can we make these prettier? Right? How can we connect it all together so that the same excitement or the same drive playing a few long tones or Schlossberg studies or whatever, as you do with something like Harry James.
Right.
So and I know that's going a little out there, but ideally we want to have that same kind of drive, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely on point with that. And whether it's music or any level, any type of education, I think sometimes we lose sight of the bigger picture. And, ultimately, what are we trying to do? If you're studying trumpet, your ultimate goal is to play music.
Yeah.
And if you separate your fundamentals from playing music, then it's really hard to apply one to the other.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think the idea of making them, putting the fun in fundamentals, obviously, because for most people,
I get it.
That's a joke. But beyond that, I mean, it's always keeping in mind what you're trying to get out of this. You're not doing technique for technique's sake. You're doing technique to give you the facility to be able to express an idea, an intention, an emotion in a tangible way. And the better your technique, the easier it is for you to do that ultimate thing, which is to touch the heart of somebody else. So I think that you're spot on with that. And I know for myself, my personality type, I work much better with someone who has the kind of approach that I hear you talking about in your personality, your attitude, and as opposed to no, you suck, do that again, and no, it has to be this way, and but when you're working with students, I mean, I know I have my own personal level of frustrations as a student and a teacher. What's kind of like your go-to strategy for like peeling away those layers of resistance to try and help a person to see the benefit in what you're giving them?
Usually I rely on throwing things. I'm kidding. No.
Particularly the person, that's really where the martial arts training comes in.
I like your approach. It's good. I like to call them mind bullets. No, yeah. That's a wonderful question, and I talk a lot. I realized I was listening to another interview. I'm sorry about that, but I guess that's why I'm on here. I recently started diving more into meditation, hypnosis, as well, and not hypnotizing other people because you get sued for that or trying to, right? And neurolinguistic programming,
right?
And this is all out of trying to figure stuff out for myself. And so there is a series of questions that I think we find are very helpful for us, and a series of questions that when we're frustrated we end up asking ourselves that don't lead us anywhere, right? So questions like, well, why does this sound like doo-doo right now? That can be a helpful question to us, right? But without more specificity, we don't really know where to go with that, because that could be anywhere. It's like, how could I make this better? Okay, so there's at least one positive track we can go with that, right? And so for me, it ends up being a matter of finding the series of questions for that particular personality that is going to lead them to thinking differently, not the way that I want them to think, because but I think more along the lines of what's going to lead them to a space where they can actually step away from the frustration and look at things in an objective way for their practice, right? Yeah. And that's the so yeah, I watch a lot of Criminal Minds to try and figure out people's mindset, right? But no, I figuring out how they react, right? So some people I think can do the really disciplined thing, and they really need, well, at least by my observation, what they need to be told what it is, and not so much, they're self-driven to a point, versus needing that external motivation to put it on themselves, right?
Yeah.
Not really external motivation then, right? But then those who are, I get a lot of this for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I grew up kind of shy, not kind of, like really, really shy. Yeah. And it's taken a big step for me. That's always been the case of like any comments I get back, and still occasionally I get comments back for like if there's an audition or whatever. So like you really could have played louder, right? So like, okay, um, that to me at this point is helpful as a reminder of like, hey, did you really step out?
Right.
But other ways of finding those motivators for that specific person. So yeah, I spent a lot of time observing, and preferably not in a weird way, but observing a personality, right,
Yeah.
of how they react, right. And I think, again, you mentioned ego a while back, and that's such where does that come in the field that we need to protect ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
say, why are you really here for a lesson? Right? Am I going to magically fix anything? It's like, no, I'm not that type of teacher. What I can do over time, when I'm finding the students that stick with me for years at a time, that they're developing that series of questions and being able to look at yourself and figure out, okay, am I really doing this, or am I kind of half-assing it? Right.
Mhm.
And that's nothing new or profound or groundbreaking. That I
Mhm.
think is profound in its simplicity. I like to think.
Oh, yeah, it's deep.
Oh, ooh,
Pooh. That's
poo.
the Tao of poo right there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but there's a technique that I used to use now. It's kind of hard to do it on the trumpet, but I actually kind of adapted something that happened in Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. When he comes out of suspended animation and his internal dialogue has been shut down.
The volume of my voice.
Yeah, so I started doing that with some of my martial arts students where they were having
Interesting.
problems, and I kept trying to figure out, how do I understand what they're thinking. Now, I had developed a strategy myself where I was able, like you're doing voice imitations, I developed the ability to imitate people's movements.
Mm.
So, and that was a tool that I used sometimes when someone was doing something I couldn't figure out how to fix it. I would try to duplicate the movement and then think about what I had to do incorrect in order to get that, so how I do the mind shift. So to try and get in somebody's head, I started thinking, well, what are they thinking? What are they actually thinking about? And so I asked them to do the series of movements, and then whatever was going on in their head, just spew it out. And there was inevitably okay, I'm doing this. I have no idea why I'm doing this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And oh crap, what am I supposed to be doing there? And you're able to hear those mental processes, and you're able to find out where someone has a very clear idea of what they're supposed to do, and when it's that, and then I do this and I end up over here. And it was just a process of understanding the mechanics of their thoughts.
Mm.
And I think that I've then transitioned to use that, where now I spend, regardless of whether I'm coaching someone on martial arts or music or meditation or business, I like to listen to what people say. It's like with NLP, right? You're listening for the patterns, you're listening for the words, because those are what really, those recurring patterns. If someone says a specific phrase over and over and over again unconsciously, then that tells you what their programming is, and then you know how to break it. So I think that your approach is just really, really brilliant for trumpet playing, and that it's that marriage of the mental approach, the physical approach, the spiritual, and by spiritual, whether you're thinking high power or just that music is something that is just beyond us. We're tapping into this universal energy, and to be able to do that and express it is just, it's amazing. So, my hat's off to you for, if I had a hat, my hat would be off to you.
Well, I mean, we both say, like, here, I'll take off my cap.
Yeah.
Okay, but I appreciate your words. Thank you. I think we also get wrapped up in an end result that sometimes we don't know what that end result is. Right. So I have one student, and this is a lot of my students remind me so much of me. Right. Like, can't get something right, can't get something right, can't get something right. Right. So what does that right? We're talking about that series of questions. Can you tell me what that is supposed to sound like, or sing it? Can you do this? And oftentimes in response, I get, right? And
Raggy?
say like, so wait a second, if you can't tell me what you want it to sound like, or you don't have an idea of what it should look like, if you're talking about a form or a movement, if you don't have a concept of what it's supposed to be or what you want it to be, then you're aiming for a moving target that's always
Exactly.
elusive, right? So
Hmm.
that I think ends up being a major issue, and even for those of us who have been in it for a long time,
Yeah.
without us realizing, it just gets even more like, meh, it's elusive, that's
Yeah.
hiding in the shadows, and digging that out, and again, that is that magic of when that happens. It's cool to be there for it,
Yeah.
but if you're not, hey, so long as they figure it out. But yeah, it's a special thing, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's like you said, finding the questions and redefining. I like to call it flipping the script. So yeah, it's like, okay, well, this sucks, and that's, you hear that a lot. God, this sucks, and no, I say, and then it's like, well, how can we flip that? How can we change? I think to I'm in a position to improve myself. Yeah, and it's just that little mind shift that occurs. So, all right, well, we're going to do something here, Mr. Romm. And when I was a young up and coming trumpet player, one of my trumpet teachers gave me a book called Nagel's Speed Studies. I don't know if you ever worked out of those. So
Nope, never worked out
okay.
it.
So I have my own speed studies here. These are basically rapid fire questions, and just like with
Oh
speed
boy,
studies,
here we
where
go.
they're going to go all over the place. So
So you
there's
remember when I was talking about crying and curling up in the fetal position? This is let me get ready.
is that like that scene in Ace Ventura with the
Oh no.
yeah. Okay, so here we go. First question. And I think we kind of touched on this before, but you're gonna go a little deeper, hopefully. Biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player.
Ooh, well, Jim Carrey.
Okay, there you go. Favorite book.
Oh, the Bible. No, Mindfulness Secrets by Jose Johnson. No, actually, the favorite book, The Magic of Thinking Big. I can't
Good
remember
book.
the author. Sorry, but The Magic of Thinking Big.
All right, good. Worst movie you've ever seen.
Um, My Life by Aaron Romm. No, I'm kidding. The there was a Steven Seagal movie, and I can't remember which one it was. One of the more recent ones.
Oh, yeah.
And so you could probably, the 10-year time span.
Anything after Under Siege was pretty much.
Nobody beats me in the kitchen. Yeah.
That was jump the shark moment right there. Okay. If you weren't a trumpet player or an educator, what would you want to do?
Actor.
Actor. There you go. What's your favorite drink?
Favorite drink? Are we talking about alcoholic or non?
You can do a multiple.
Oh man, if we're going, we had discussed tequila before. I'm not a big drinker. I never feel good, so I don't drink very often. But if I need to wind down a little bit, tequila.
Mm-hmm.
And if on a regular basis, I think I'm probably the only person supporting this company right now, Celsius. I for whatever reason, they market it as an energy drink. I think it makes me more tired than anything else, but for whatever reason, it's just so delish, and yeah. So it's
okay.
fun. It's
I'll
very
have to
highly
check.
caffeinated. Yeah.
I will check that out. That could explain a whole lot, Aaron.
Yep.
Okay. You could have a dinner party with any three living people. Who would you invite?
Ooh. Stallone,
Hmm.
Schwarzenegger,
Ooh.
and the last one, the childhood one in me, Jim Carrey.
Okay. That would be
Yeah.
a very interesting dinner party.
It's a lot. Yeah, that's what happens when you get a lot of big personalities and very strong dominant personalities in one room, and just to see, because I'd be like, fanboy over there, like,
Right.
Just like, wow. But yeah, just because they let me watch action movies growing up, the real 80s action movies.
The real ones.
The
Yeah.
real ones, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What if we could have another dinner party, but you can invite 3 people from history, 3 people that are no longer with us?
I'd start with Abraham Lincoln.
Because of the beard?
Lincoln. Yeah, because of the beard. Because like, hey, I want you to know that I'm doing a much more aerodynamic version of your beard, and I think him because it would be interesting not only for, this isn't a political statement, for him to look at what's going on now and have a perspective and say, like, what do we do? Historically, there's someone else I want to think of. Who was my mind is going in so many different directions right now. This is tough. I think the other one I would think to invite to a dinner party would be I'm blanking right now. I'm blanking. This is so tough. This is such a great question. Because you're talking about 3 people, and I'm stalling. I'm totally stalling right now. 3 people that we want to mix, right? We want that, and I'm totally defeating the purpose of the speed round here. Do they have to be non-trumpet players in this particular case? Historical figures?
Any historical figure.
Let's say because let's say Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein.
Okay.
Bernstein, because we have to have a musician in there somewhere, and I say that because of my trumpet lineage, to be like, okay, so I need to understand where that stuff came from,
right?
And let's say, man, can we come back to this one? We can't. No, we can't. Okay. Oh man. Jeepers. This is, my mind is like, come on, Brandon. We have a perfectly functioning brain. It's not. It's like that scene in Homer in the Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
I know we don't work together very often, but I need you here right now. Donuts. Well, whoever invented donuts, because they've changed my life.
That's okay. We'll take it with that. All right. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Ooh, plated. But I do want to add an addendum, because I'm actually playing a raw brass trumpet right now, and I'm enjoying not having to clean it. It's wonderful. So there's that.
There you go. Yeah, my acid in my skin eats through lacquer, so I can't. I can't do that. So yeah. All right. What's your favorite quote?
I'm gonna defer to Stallone on this one, and this is from the Rocky Balboa movie, not the ones before Creed. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. Very mean and nasty place. It'll beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, and nobody ain't gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. There you go.
Bravo.
Now, I've been fortunate to be a best man at several weddings. Mm-hmm. I didn't know the people. They just asked me to.
They just asked you to show up, yeah.
And that was the quote that I did, and it works in every situation. So now you know my secret.
Okay, now we know your wonderful technique there. Okay, Aaron, what is your biggest fear?
Spiders. No, I think the biggest fear for me is getting to the end of my life and not actually looking back and say, yeah, I went after that. I might not have succeeded, but I was too scared to go after that. Right. Yeah. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Like real nightmare stuff.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Yep. Now I know. That and spiders.
Yep.
Okay. You could only have one superpower. What would it be?
To Be able to think faster. No. I would say ability to control time. Control time. I think this is very much related to the other question you just asked,
Right.
psychologically. But yeah, ability to control time. And not to be like super fast or anything, not trick people, but to, you know, there's a moment that you look back and say, I didn't live in that moment long enough. I didn't really look at it. Could I go back and do that?
Yeah.
You know, or could I see what else is coming?
Yeah.
And to live there for not permanently, but to experience one more time.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. We'll work on the screenplay for that superhero movie, and
oh, that was trickery. That was
yes.
trickery. Oh man, and then here I was. You were doing a cast of characters with all the dinner party thing.
Exactly.
Should have seen it coming.
All right. So we're going to go back. Last couple questions are going to be about the trumpet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What aspect of trumpet playing do you think is the most overrated?
Techniques, like specialized techniques for high note screaming. And I say that not to piss off people. I say that only in a way of when it's for a specific purpose, good, right? But if that's all we want to do, then we're missing out a lot, right? So I guess it's not even the technique. The technique itself is important, but the way that we look at it rather is the more important part, I think.
Okay. What aspect do you think is the most underrated?
Long tones. Long tones.
Long tones it is. Okay. Going back to your answer about your superpower, you do have the ability to go back in time now and give your younger self some advice about music. What do you think the advice you would want to give your younger self would be?
What to listen for. What to listen for. Specifically about music, that was one thing where when we listen to something and we know we like it, it's like, oh, that's cool, but we don't really know why. And not that we always need to dive into that. Sometimes and oftentimes, maybe it's better that we don't. But to say when we're learning a craft, knowing what to listen for is really super important. So knowing that concept sooner would have been really, really helpful, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And what advice would you give your younger self about life?
It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Take a step forward. One step at a time. Tiny steps are okay, so long as you're taking a step forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, Aaron, my friend, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great.
Thank you for your patience with me.
It's okay, Grasshopper. We're all good. If people want to find out more about you, see what's going on in your life, what's the best way to do that?
I'm relatively active on Facebook and Instagram, Aaron Romm, but I do have a website, aaronromm.com, and then for voice stuff, there's the aaronrommvoice.com, and check that stuff out there.
All right. Awesome. Well, I, for one, am looking forward to seeing the effects of your contribution to the world of trumpet, both as a performer and educator. I'm sure that as the years progress, that you're going to make more and more of a stamp on the landscape of trumpet. And I just look forward to hanging with you again real soon.
It means the world. Thank you so much for talking with me this morning and allowing me to blither on about things. Thank you so much.
Blither on, my friend.
Blither on.
All right. So thank you for spending time with us today on the Trumpet Gurus Hang. And as always, folks, peace and slide grease. We are out. Hey, thank you so much for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating connection through a mutual love for the trumpet life. I hope that you learned a few things about today's guest and had some laughs along the way. Don't forget to give us a review. We love those 5-star ratings. And please share this podcast with your friends. We want to see our hang grow for show. Have a suggestion for a future topic or a guest? Hit me up at thetrumpetgurus@gmail.com. Our opening theme was written and performed by Lexi Signor, and all other music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. So in the words of W.C. Handy, life is like a trumpet. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out. So go out there and let your trumpet sound. And I'll see you at the next hang.